Hello, hello. Happy Friday.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, hey,
Hey,
everybody.
how y'all doing today?
Good. What's going on with you? How are you?
I'm doing good. It's raining, so it's just kind of gross today, but
We're all stormy here.
yep.
Yeah, it was nasty here for a few days, and now it's decent outside. Kind of makes you want to be out there doing something.
Well, let's jump in. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the cryocan and how it was made, other pieces that have been made throughout the years. So, you want to kick us off, Rye, and give us a little background since you've worked on this for the longest?
Yeah, I'm trying. I've been threatening to do this for years, and I'm struggling to figure out exactly where to start. Like I was telling you guys before we came on, I was even trying to do a little cheat sheet here, just so um, we didn't spin our wheels. But just to give you guys an example, I mean, I've got so many different cryos here to talk about in different cans and so on. So let's go all the way back to the beginning when fans, first started doing cryocan replicas. Because it's been a long time, 25 plus years ago, in particular on the RPF, which was kind of at the forefront, the Replica Prop Forum, very important. I still, we still visit it now. Hear people like Adam Savage talks about it often. A lot of good information has come from that over the years. And back in the prop renaissance, when we were all trying to figure everything out, in the late '90s, it was instrumental in just being a great place to go for info. So
Now,
on the go ahead.
is that when the RPF kind of started? Was the late '90s? Just
It did.
because they were responding to what other producers at the time were making, and that got people excited, and they wanted to start trying to make their own stuff and researching their own props.
Well, I've been there a long time, and I went over it. I believe it still might have been the Titanic forums, is what they called it. And I'm not so sure it didn't start out. Brandon started the RPF, Allinger, over from Prop Store. I believe he started the RPF, if I'm not mistaken, or he was certainly instrumental in it. So I wasn't there, but apparently everybody was trying to figure out how to make the jewel, the Titanic necklace,
Ah,
from the Titanic forums. Uh, I had been doing some work, buying a lot of stuff from a company called Alberta Industrial Models, and I need to try to catch up with them. There was a guy named Peter Lucas over there who was just awesome, and he is responsible for having sent me a link when I was just doodling. I was a collector and a builder at the time. So I was doing phasers and just anything I could get my hand on, classic phasers, that sort of thing. And Peter and them were really they were the first guys to get access to things like the cherubs from the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail, or, they were just diehard guys who were coming by cool stuff. They were just good prop makers. And as their name suggested, industrial models, they did like oil rig models for companies. I mean, these guys knew their stuff. And anyway, Peter had said, "You got to get over and check out this prop forum." He goes, "You'll meet a lot of guys who will love your stuff, and you can get a lot of info over there." So he had sent me over to the RPF, and yeah, that was my introduction. And it's funny, I don't remember having seen any real Titanic related threads. When I got there, everybody was arguing about how many blades are on a lightsaber, what's at the end of Solo's blaster. People were hypothesizing, is it a fire extinguisher front end? Is it a flash suppressor off of what any number of different machine guns, that sort of thing. It was a good time to be a builder. So when the topic came around for the cryocans, although I get associated with them a lot and have certainly dabbled with them over the years, I wasn't the first guy to dig in and try and make a replica. Um, I, I would say the guy's name. I hate name dropping on people, just in case they they've moved on and don't want to be associated with that sort of stuff. But there was a guy he did a lot of droid parts. So there's a tale for some guys. He did a lot of droid parts, and he was doing some good machine work. And he did a really nice replica of the cryocan, and it was beyond it was a wonderful, good guess. And I say that in the most spirited bit of context, not to diminish it in any way. I mean, it was damn close for all the reference that was available to us. Remember, there was no Blu-rays or
Right.
anything, and seldom would you see something on display anywhere. So
VHS was like what you had to go to.
that was it.
The internet was young and not a lot of good stuff there, probably.
Yeah, and when you would pause a VHS, it would look like a Picasso. It was just be nuts. So he had a
I should also say this is well before the days of 3D printing. So any hobbyists trying to get into this thing, they were doing this by hand. This is all.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're at a mill. They're sitting there on an old Inco engine lathe or something that's just grinding out. Yes, they're slinging metal. So this guy did a wonderful metal replica, and of course he just took the Barbasol can available at the time would have been just like this one, and he cut the bottoms off, and voila, you had your cryocan replica. Uh, as people got a little more dialed in, as is often the case, you've seen it. Somebody will do a Vader helmet, then they'll do a version 2 and 3 and 4, and finally you get dialed in. The community on the RPF got really involved on the cryos, and one guy would discover this, and another guy would discover that. So again, no false modesty here. I've often got a lot of undue credit for ferreting out all these details on cryos, and so much of it was done when I took an interest in it. So the community on the RPF, they're the ones who initially ferreted all the details that resulted in some of my first hobby runs. As a service to the community, just hobbyist, providing what the kids needed. That was one of the first projects I really dug in on and started doing some machine work. And it was in a great many ways due to the heavy lifting of all the people in the RPF. Again, one guy finds this, one guy does that, because it's ultimately a complex prop, as we'll get into. And then I had the opportunity to actually hold what was supposedly an original one, and this was well over 20 years. So let's do that. Let's talk about the original. So the original cryos that you would see, everybody did them with a flat bottom and a bolt up the middle. Now, the guy I was referencing earlier had also done something similar. So as you start to put this together, that just seems the way it should be. That's the logical mechanical step that you would do to facilitate the replica. But what everybody did back in the day is this whole center area would be hogged out like this. Anytime you ever saw the prop on display or in the film, you can't really see what's happening in here behind the vials. And I took the labels off this just so you could get an idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but if you
assume it's straight walled behind there.
Right. So if you're looking at this one, and this is an end all be all one, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if you're looking at this with the vials in it, it's easy to presume this is what's happening on the inside. We don't find out until years later that that's what's happening on the inside. You've got a really intricate bit of machine work that completely gets lost. You can't see that when the vial's in, so it may as well be, that. So this was one of the first things. For years when you would see a replica, even now when people do replicas, mine were even done this way. They were hogged out in the middle and they were flat on the bottom. So here's how I got to see one. I was working for another company and we were putting product in Universal. Again, in a different life. It's funny. I have kids who are married who have children now, and I think about that when I first got on the RPF, they were babies. It's so funny to see how so many of us have grown in this hobby, and I remember running down to Universal. I was if you ever saw Spider-Man Daily Bugle newspapers in Universal, hey, this guy, put that stuff in queue on the ride. But when I'm down there, of course I had an act. I love Jurassic Park, so of course I'm backstage. I got a guy, and I'm like, hey, what is that cryo right there that was in the queue? And again, it's not like a gazillion replicas were done. We can take it on pretty good authority that this was a made for production piece. So when I got to see it, it was indeed flat on the bottom. I took note of it being flat on the bottom, and it had a bolt up the middle. again, like this one. But I was in a hurry. It was clear, I shouldn't be nosing around too much. And, hey, get what reference you can, grab a couple shitty photos, and let's go. So, I was at the time concerned about, hey, were these threads functional? That's something I always wanted to know. What's that O-ring for? How tall are these nibs? I'm grabbing quick reference. I'm trying to see if this was ever utilized, the little faux screws at the top. And I didn't take any vials out. So at a glance, I'm thinking, this. I I looked really close and I didn't see any signs of these little tines peeking through. Like you see, I mean, if you look super close, you can see what I mean. You just cannot tell what's happening in there, right? So I go back and I share that information with the community. And then everybody's still doing their version of a replica and so on. And we're still trying to demystify this thing. And that's kind of what led to what you had for 2 decades of that particular style of cryo, that flat bottom, that hogged out center section. And if I had to guess what they were doing, as is often the case on any production, you get A and B level props, you get heroes, you get background pieces. That is a shit ton of machine work. As Jared said, it's not getting CNC'd out. I mean, that's just a ton of work. And remember, those guys were cutting the bottoms off real shaving cream cans. We'll talk about that too. So this replica here is, I mean, if I left it in the backyard for a couple weeks, you would not be able to tell the difference between this and a screen used one. I mean, the bottom of a shaving cream can's been cut off. This has been hogged out and shoved up in here. You've got your catalog numbers on the bottom, that sort of thing. Blu-rays start coming out after about 20 years, and people start to see, hey, is something happening in there? Also, one of the heroes started showing up on display at one of the theaters at City Walk in California, and then ultimately at a Planet Hollywood. People were able to get some pictures of the bottom and the vials, and that's when we started taking note of, hey, what's exactly written on the centrifuge tubes, that sort of thing. That would be stage 2, where the arguments online started to be, I think I see a concave. And when you watch the film and they're, unscrewing the can, I don't think that's actually happening. They're faking it, right? So I guess we can spitball there. So I think there were 2 levels of props. I think there was a hero, and I think they did some background stuff just due to the time that it took to bring those things together.
This is usually the case for film props. They
Sure.
rarely ever make one because things go wrong. Actors drop props and break them, so they need backups. They have reshoots that they got to do. And where's that prop? I don't know. Make another one. Happens all the time.
Exactly. So I would think, if the idea was they're going to skip this thing down a bank or a road, or it's going to get shot, absolutely. It's the difference of a couple hours of work with doing the intricate little ramps, or a concave bottom, or the differences we've talked about between this one. So personally, I mean, these are the fun things that just to guess at, because so many of the details have been lost to time. I talked about this in another video where I know the shop that made the cryocans for the film, and was talking to the prop master. And we've worked with them on our Blade Runner stuff. It's the same studio. I know he doesn't want me to name drop, but I told you guys about that. We were just shooting the shit, and he was looking at our website while we were talking about Blade Runner, and he goes, cryocan. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I remember that. I remember working on that. And I'm like, you made the cryo? I'm like, I've been looking for you for 25 years, dude. And then I just went full nerd on him, and I started asking all kind of questions. He was like, dude, we made that over 30 years ago. He goes, I don't know. I mean, like we've talked about so many times, it was just a job. They move on.
That's what's funny about these guys is they work on these props and they move on to the next job. For them, it's a thing they did a few years ago. They don't remember the details, the measurements, all that stuff. Even if they kept some paperwork, or designs or sketches, or it's rare that they ever do that, in fact.
Yeah, and I believe he was probably the prop master. He didn't actually sit there and turn this thing, but which would have even more would have been lost there. But it was so comical that I instantly turned like complete nerd and it start peppering him with just this onslaught of questions. And he's like, dude, way too long ago. And he just completely shut me down. But he goes, good job though. So, thanks, dude. Yeah, good show. And so that was my replica journey, getting to there, and then just being a builder in the community, and helping get some runs together from time to time, and then of course it came our turn to do it on a license level. So getting to handle yet another the emphatic that we knew came out of Universal's archives prop was when we were able to nail down those sort of details. We know the ramp is in there. We know there's a concave bottom. So we can talk about that real quick. So the original prop, of course, when you see it up close, is just beat to snot. And the bottom is clearly, you can tell they cut off a real shaving cream can bottom and glued it on there. You can see the glue pushing out around the edges, that sort of thing. So I guess the first question would be, why didn't we do that? Let's start there. Why didn't we put a real shaving cream can bottom? What you can't see is there's a little metal lip here where just on the corner where all this is seating into this bottom. You can't really do away with that when you're just machining it off. And it's a real sharp edge. So one, even if we wanted to kill 3,500 shaving cream cans off, you learn very quickly, you've got the way these have, when the hobby runs are done, you'd stick them in a vise and you cut it off, and sometimes you kink the can, destroy it. The loss alone, and how many thousands would have lost their lives to do it the way they did this, it just makes it impossible. But two, it's sharp. It's a little unnecessarily sharp, like top of soup can sharp, and just not practical when we can come along and replicate the steel concave bottom. And that's the other thing. Again, when you see it in the film, look at that. You can't tell for a second that that's really concaved. And you can start to get it at certain angles, and your eye can try to matrix it, but even then you can't tell. So that's why that was such a mystery forever. But we were actually able to, figure out, sure, it's concaved on the bottom. So when we did ours, we just mimicked all of that. So all that just got baked into the machine work here. It creates the same look. It's just cleaner, because that was the other thing. If we had to glue these things on, it would have looked like ass. No matter how much time we took to just sit there and seat these things, it would have looked so bad. So to mimic the lip and do the concave was the homogenized version. The better way to do that. It looks cleaner. It's just sexier. It's a better finish. Another thing a lot of people ask about is how the can actually seats. So
I get that question a lot.
Which one?
The how the can seats and whether or not it actually screws on. We get that question in customer service quite a bit.
Yeah, and I get it still. It happens at shows. It happens on forums. So again, here's what we'll speculate a little bit. We'll take a good educated guess on what the thought process was when this was being put together. So if you look at it, most people start to conclude these are threads right at the bottom. And so the natural assumption is you're going to stick this in the can, and that's going to thread in right there, right? Well, there's no way you're going to put threads, in this thing. That's just not happening. So they probably thought it still looked cool though. So, hey, let's leave that. Let's leave that. That looks good. So then they're like, well, how are we going to get this thing we want it to lock off in the can. So most of you guys out there, or you guys even know, you've seen the Barbasol diversion, the can safes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they make Ajax cans or Campbell soup or whatever, but the idea is it's just the bottom of the can screws off. I forget where it is. It's in one of the vignettes. Or just the extra footage on one of the Blu-rays or something, where they're talking about, I forget who it was, but essentially dude's saying he's in a Walgreens late one night. He sees a Barbasol can and he's like, hey, that'd be a good idea. We could do that's how we're going to smuggle dino DNA. He probably saw a can safe and thought, hey, let's let's do this because it makes sense. You would just take the bottom, the bottom portion. As I take stuff apart, you take this bottom portion of a cryo, and then, well, we'll just make that thread right into that little ring that's in there, that's present on the can safe. And in fact, when I first did my first replica, I just presumed that's how they were done. And I bought a bunch of can safes. And then by the time we got to machining, all this part, I was like, oh, it only holds like 6, because I had to scale it down so small to fit past that big lip that's inside a Barbasol can. Realized, well, they didn't do it that way. So then what a lot of people have speculated on and asked about, let's find one. So here's the inside of a regular shaving cream can. That's what it looks like. There's evidence in some of the, particularly one of the, that was the other thing. Nothing like this was inside of the first can I looked at. So I think what they tried to do, the idea was, hey, we're going to make this actually screw in to the top the can, a little female thread here. This is so tiny, and once you've studied a couple of the original props, you realize real fast. Even one of these, there's some footage out there of one of these that sold at auction not too long ago, supposedly an original one. I do think it was. It had all the hallmarks of a real cryo. You can see this no longer worked. They literally just shove the thing in. It goes in. There's a friction fit. The O-ring here locks it off, and that's it. Give it a twist, and it's done. I think the original prop makers intended for this to work, and I think it took all of about 2 or 3 screwing it in and out before it got all burred up and didn't work anymore. And then you get the O-ring that actually holds it in place. On one of the original props that I got to look at, the O-ring was gone. Clearly, probably got cut with just sliding in and out of this sharp edge here. And it actually had 2 red rubber bands shoved on it. And at a glance, it looked like the rust-colored O-ring, but it was just rubber bands. So that's ultimately what made for the friction fit. We know this didn't work. There's evidence that they wanted that to work because we could see where they machined a little thing in the top of one of the Barbasol cans. Like I said, I'm guessing with the threads being so small, when they were just crammed in there, it burred up, no longer worked. And in fact, one of our cans that we looked at from Universal was stuck. The shell was stuck on it, and it had to be pried off for that very reason. So this is one of those things. So sure, I suppose we could have run with that and said, well, let's try what they looks like they originally envisioned doing. And of course, ours would have suffered the same fate as the original, because if we're doing exactly what they did, that doesn't always mean it's a good idea. When by the time you put it in the hand of a collector, and then everybody be like, I can't open my cryo, it's all gummed up. And it's just the case of sometimes things are just made to look good on screen. Sometimes things are just made to look cool and survive a one-day shoot, and they move on. So I never saw one that actually worked. As far as a screen use piece goes, they were gummed up, frozen, or otherwise just didn't work. So I think the idea was there. I think they said, let's try that. Okay, that was a no-go. Let's try that. And then if I'm guessing, that's how we got to the O-ring. But I mean, they could have had the O-ring on there just for looks, and then it just performed out of necessity when everything else didn't. Who knows? I mean, it'd be fun to have a talk with somebody who cared or still remembered the details. But like we were saying, that's lost the time and have moved on. But our decision was, hey, let's replicate the thread. And that was the other thing. We could have taken a liberty with it. I mean, theoretically, I could have made that a big old fat disco thread and done the same thing with the female connector inside of the can. And in it, very clumsily, it would just been a big old chunk of metal. Sure, it would have done that, but it wouldn't look right. We would have then altered measurements, right? So we don't want to do that. So we ultimately ended up with the domed shaving cream bottom, the faux thread here, the correct size there, and then we did what they did, and that's shove it up in the can and let this make a friction fit. And when you watch the film, you could see it's. Let me act like I'm unscrewing it, for the sake of the scene. So that's what it ends up at. So that takes us to screen accurate as far as the rack goes. So we were talking about this before we came on. You guys had some questions about the shaving cream can, the Barbasol.
Yeah,
Somebody want?
the shape of the Barbasol can, because they did change over the course of, you know,
Yeah.
multiple different years.
So Barbasol kept their barber pole graphic for decades. This pretty much at a glance, this can stayed the same. There were a couple. At one point, it went from 11 ounces to 10 ounces, but it didn't change the size of the can. It was just the contents changed. But the 11 ounces is like this one says 10 on it, and this would be an example of an accurate can, and this is an inaccurate can. So what's the difference? At a glance, again, look the same, right? So for its time, the early 90s Barbasol cans had a straight wall right here. See how this is just straight right to this lip? And then this one has a little bit of an indent right here, just where it was cinched when it was
Looks more like
capped.
a soda can.
Sure. And just side by side, once you see it, you can't unsee it. But that's that would be the primary difference on the can shape itself. And this bell changes a little bit too at the top. So when we got into doing ours, we had to ferret out the correct top, the walls, and everything. And this is actually just was a pre-cut can, just so we could play with some sizes, make sure our dimensions were right. But this was out of a Barbasol, a company that's what all they did was make cans for Barbasol. And then we kind of got dialed in on like, hey, can we still do this? Do you still have the tooling for that particular shape? And we really fretted over it. I mean, to such an extent that if you guys recall the time we spent with Barbasol. So it wasn't enough that we just worked with Universal on the licensing, to call it a Jurassic Park cryocan. Barbasol was involved to such a great extent. We went through their parent company, Cryo, worked with their legal team, who then made sure we were using the right period. They got into it. It was great. So they're making sure we're like, hey, we don't want to do a plastic can. I don't want to do, we didn't want to tool out and just make a plastic shell for this thing with the right graphic on it. We thought for a minute that's what we might have to do. But once Perio got involved and we started going through some of the people who actually did the metal work and still had the old tooling, we had the opportunity to do just that and replicate it exactly as you see in the film. Even the barcode on the back, the way the information was written, it's all there. And I've seen some people speak to that online and say, oh, well, they got this wrong and they got that wrong. Because the internet, they always know best. They're not always comparing apples to apples. The cans moved around a little bit from 91 to 93 and so forth. There could be a new relationship with a steel company, and maybe they got a little tag then on the back. There could be another relationship with yet a side company. Some of the little details just on the bottom of the can would change, like such and such steel company and so forth. And then if you're looking at this particular can and you're saying, oh, but then there's the so this one's like original, and then there's a sensitive skin that's got a different color, and then there's another one. Well, that stuff on the back changes a lot. These little different recycles that showed up later, a lot of that changes over the years, even down to there's a .com, that certainly wasn't present in 93, and that sort of thing. So again, just so we can squash that, we got our graphic from Barbasol, and they had their files, and we went by their files, so we know, we're comfortable saying that's pretty accurate. And that was it. So when we replicated the can, we even went as far as to put the little cap on it that you see. It serves no purpose other than it's got the real push button cap. Do you remember, Amy, when we got thousands of these caps? It was the craziest thing in the world. We had and then we had to send them overseas and form, like, what are these? But yeah, that's how badly we wanted that to be right, that we even had to shop the caps, and then of course leave the mechanism as it would be. Well, what the inside would look like once you cut it out. We even left the nib in it. So yeah, and then the graphic that you see on ours is of course printed. It's not a vinyl wrap. It is a real shaving cream can. We just went retro on it. So that brings us to the microcentrifuge tubes. There's even a story in that, right?
That was a nightmare.
So when we wanted to do these little microcentrifuge tubes, they're real. They got a little O-ring on them and everything. We thought we might have to tool up and just replicate these because we needed so many thousands of them, and they're freaking expensive. These are really expensive to buy real ones, and they're still used. They still use them today. They're just not as common as some of the pop vials that have the lid baked into it. So for a second, it looked like we're never going to be able to find enough of these, right? And so we reach out to some of the pharmaceutical companies, and then ultimately, one of the companies responsible for the vials, one of their reps was had a conference in Charleston, about an hour and a half from where I am here in Myrtle Beach. And we're trying to explain how many thousands of these we need, and we need to make a deal. And
We needed those specific ones. We couldn't have ones without the ribbing around the edges.
Yeah, because some have ribs and some don't, and then there's so many. This is 1.5 conical microcentrifuge tube. There's so much nonsense there. So dude's like, yeah, I can get you a few hundred. No, we need thousands. And they're like, and what kind of lab work do you guys do? No, we don't do any lab work. And anyway, somehow in my chats with him, it came up. He likes to play disc golf, and I'm like, oh, I like to play disc golf. I got a course right here by work, and he drove up from Charleston so we could play disc golf and figure out what we were going to do with all these centrifuge tubes. So, in a weird way, cryocans happened because of disc golf, licensed cryocans. So we struck our deal, and thousands upon thousands of those later, we had to cross coordinate with the factory of, hey, load all these up, and that's pretty much it for those. The only other fun thing would be the what's on the vials, where it's like TC 2.0 VR-1. A couple of them repeat themselves, that sort of thing. Those were taken of notes of real cryos. The vials were still in one of the props we messed with, and we just made a note of all the ones that were there, and so what you see is how it was. And
even one of the sheets we found, it was an unused sheet of the stickers, so they were all laid out flat, like, oh, there they all are. You don't have to even look at the vials; they're there.
Yeah, and there a couple of them are inconsistent, where some have a slash, like TR slash 3.0. Some of them are just a dot. There's really no consistency in them. And then another question we sometimes get is, people are like, why don't you stick the stickers on the vials? Mm-hmm. Well, the original prop, so when you get them, we give you a couple sticker sheets, and of course they're like this. The reason we do that is because when you see the original prop, they've cut, some of these don't wrap all the way around the vial. They've just nipped them off with scissors and stuck them on sideways, and they're hanging off a corner. No real care taken to how they were labeled. So I couldn't bring myself to, you know who that is. Of course, he's going to call. He knows this is what we do, and there's time that he does. Jesus. So anyway, I couldn't bring myself to take the pretty machine work and everything that we put into these and then stick those stickers on sideways. I could not do it. And I am, man, I want my replicas exactly as they appear in the film, but they stuck those stickers on so haphazardly. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I like mine on nice and straight like that. I like them to look pretty and you know, I like the graphic to wrap all the way around. Technically, if you want to be dead on screen accurate, you need to just cut those off and close your eyes and stick it on ever how you want to. I mean, some of them had Scotch tape holding them on still. I mean, they were beat. So that's why we gave you 2 sets. So, and it only takes a second to do it. And I've seen a couple people fuss about that. Stop it.
Something required.
Yeah, you just stick them on ever how you want to. If you want them pretty and straight, do that. If you want them beat to hell and hanging off to one side, well, have at it. But that's why we give you the option. And then the only other thing, of course, we didn't ship them with any liquid in it, because it makes for a whole nightmare with customs and shipping and, hey, what's in that? These things already look like some damn chemical delivery device. So the last thing we want to do is, Jesus. Sorry, guys. I guess I could just cut the phone off and there we go. Yeah, that's what I should have done. Anyway, so what they used in it, it's water and yellow food coloring. I mean, that's it. I've seen a lot of people try to get really exotic about, hey, what do I fill my centrifuge tubes with? We've said you could use Dawn if you just want a yellow liquid to stay in there. Water and yellow food coloring. Then some people are like, oh, but you start to get critters floating in it. This can, I filled these up. These have been filled up like 2 years ago, and I don't see anything floating in there. So I don't know what people are doing, but that's just water and yellow food coloring. But it shows in a pinch when we don't have water and yellow food coloring. We send somebody out and they get some Dawn, and we just stick Dawn in them. I did notice, I don't know if it's Mr. Clean or Pine Sol. Rhonda had a cleaner out not 2 weeks ago, and I was like, that's such a cool yellow. And I'm like, and it's never going to get anything growing in it or anything if that's your concern. It might be the O-ring.
I could see Pine Sol working.
It might have been Pine Sol, but if you don't have any kids and you're not worried about somebody drinking the dino DNA, as it were, maybe that's an option. We'll leave that up to you guys. But
didn't we use like a yellowish green Listerine one time too, like a mouthwash?
Yeah. Yeah. We've used mouthwashes come in popular a lot of times for these, and we filled the bat gas capsules with
the blue Listerine. Yeah.
And if you just got a little dragon going, you can always just pop a gas capsule and knock it out. But there you go. That's right. So that's pretty much the genesis of the cryocan. So we go from the RPFers really ferreted out the initial details. And if you look and you want to say, hey, that kind of being the most primitive at the time, and then but for counting some rings and some other details that were ferreted out by everybody, and then finally getting to see that B-tiered piece that I'm talking about. If you look at that one from 25 years ago, and you compare it to the new that we know is as sexy as it gets, it's not a big difference. They look, the perspective here is making them look different sizes, but they're the same size. Everybody had it pretty damn close back in the day, but again, the luxury of being able to get to machine these based on what you see with the proper ramp and everything, that's the real telltale difference. It doesn't negate this one in the flat bottom. It's just I would guess that was like a backup or a stunt piece. I believe it was a production made piece though, and maybe it was a production made piece that never saw the light of day. Who knows? But I still say the original assumption of a flat bottom. There's some validity to that, but we know what we know and love in the film as far as the prop we had access to that had the inventory tags on it. That's what gets us to here. So there you go. And then, of course, for those who don't know, sometimes people will ask, hey, what are those little paper tags that you have on the prop? And Sean, I'm guessing, is showing pictures all along the way here. Those were as the inventory tags set on the prop on the shelf. So when we were talking to our production, our PD guy over at Universal at the time, we were like, wouldn't it be cool if we just threw in the inventory tags too? Let's offer it exactly as it sets, and they thought that was a cool idea. So that's how that happened. And I guess we could close out. I'm looking at the clock, Amy. I feel your look. I feel you looking at me. Wrap it up. The only, and this brings us to, because this happens a lot. Replicas out there. Of course, we're not shy about saying, hey, there's a reason this is $399. I mean, look at it. It's aircraft aluminum. It's machined perfectly, and it's got quite the story behind it that makes it what it is. It is not somebody's best guess. It is not a garage made piece. It is, leave it in the backyard a little bit, let it age up. There's no difference between it and an original. I mean, it is as clean as it gets. But there are a lot of replicas out there, and that's on you how you add stuff to your collection. But there's one to look out for. If you see a $30 or a $40 cryo can, a $99 cryo can, come on. Most of those ads are showing pictures of our can, straight off our website, no less. Or when people have shared pictures of our replica online, they've even contacted us and said, look, these guys are using my photos of your can. And we're like, yeah, we see it. It's up to the studios to police that sort of thing, gang. So we can just tell you to be educated consumers and you get what you paid for. But if you see some of the shit shows that people get in the mail, I mean, it's usually chrome plastic. The Barbasol can says Barbasoy on it, or it doesn't have a name on it at all. The fact is, it looks like a $30 cryo can should look, or a $99 one or whatever. And then if you're flirting with anything even close, if you see somebody offer a $299 replica, $250, you might as well take the plunge. Nobody else is going to make these things. I mean, we made 3,500 of them. We're more than halfway through the run. It'll be another 10 or 15 years before who in their right mind would make them on top of us, right? And the most they could do is replicate this one. So get one while the price is appropriate. And you don't have to chase it on the secondary market. And I mean, if you want the $30 one, hey, it's on you. Rock on. Cosplay's cool. We get it. Sometimes you don't want to lug around the $400 piece, but I'm just kind of spelling out because it does come up for us a lot. Why, hey, why is this $3.99 and it looks exactly like this $35 one? Well, because this $3.99 one is that picture of the supposed $35 one. It's just that's not what you're going to get. I was telling Jared, I've seen some real bastardized looking replicas. I mean, one of them that was shipped almost looks like it has a chalice at the top, and it's this part at the bottom. It looks like this, but when you get it, it's like a wine glass. It makes no sense. It's like Bizarro Universe. What is happening?
I was saying it looks like AI designed that. If you said, make me a cryo can from Jurassic Park, and the AI kicked out one for you, here you go.
That is exactly what it looks like. But I think we covered it. Unless you guys had any other questions, that is the genesis of the cryocan and the cryocan replica.
So the one thing that I did want to point out for just people, if they're trying to look for a cryocan, if it actually is ours, on the very bottom, you will actually see, and there's probably no way I'm going to be able to get, you can actually see a legal line written into the bottom of this rack. Now, that is because we're licensees. It was required to put on there. But if you have any question about whether or not it actually is our piece that you're buying, that's a telltale sign right there that it's got a legal line on the concave bottom.
Yeah, and it'd have the super sexy packaging and everything that we did on the box.
The best way to guarantee that you are getting one of ours is just go to our website and order it, paragonfxgroup.com. There you go. So 100% guaranteed you're going to get the right one.
Yep.
45 minutes and didn't even think to say that. So yeah, just to wrap it all up, let's land the plane. 3,500 of these were made. As with anything we do, we're not going to repeat it. Once they're sold out, we know it's a popular item. Theoretically, we could stay and license the Universal forever and do version 2 and do the dirty version and all this other stuff. We're content to leave this alone. And fun fact, we actually do have, I don't even know, Jared, if you saw it. We do have the beat dirty version can that was approved. We thought for a second about doing the 2.0, the rusted out can and everything. But I hate when people do the son of or the cousin of version. And even though I love it, even though I think that's a fun version, I think it kind of could bastardize the market a little bit, right?
Well, I've also learned that historically, when you try and sell the damaged or less than ideal version of a thing, people tend to not like that because it looks like it's damaged or less than ideal, even though that's what was on screen. But people want the nice, clean version.
Yeah. One does exist in my collection of the beat to shit rusted out Barbasol can. But you're right, because you weather everything else up to look like that, and yeah, the average collector doesn't appreciate that vision. But and then we even talked about maybe we'd make 100 of them and just randomly insert them, short pack them, and then to your point, Jared, I figured people might get it and actually complain. You know, like, hey, this looks nothing like what I thought I was getting. And then we have to explain, well, that's because you win. You got the super duper badass short pack. But again, we thought it would be more hassle than fun. So we didn't do that. But like I said, more than halfway through these, our mission is complete with JP. We wanted to do Hammond's cane. We wanted to do the cryocan, of course, the NV goggles. And, you know, there's one or two other things we could look at. It just depends on what we choose to do with a continued relationship or not, you know, with the studio. So we've talked about that in another video. License Expo is coming up. We're going to talk about some stuff, see how it goes. But it's a little bit like getting a series renewed. We think we've ended on a good note. And, you know, if there's room for a bit of a sequel, and maybe we'll make a couple other things, that might happen. But I wouldn't count on it. I think this is a good place to be, but we'll see what happens.
Right on.
Definitely.
Is that it? You guys got anything else?
No, I think I've covered everything very concisely. I'm very impressed.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's not so new to us because we do this. We've lived this for a while, but it's great to get it all in one episode, so to say. Like, yeah, this is the cryocan episode, and everything you need to know about it is here.
It's the cryo. I think it's the cryo Bible. I think everything that can be shoved in there, and
very special episode.
Very special episode of Paragon Effects Group. We're going to tackle the cryocan. Yeah, that's what happened. So it's an after-school special. I wish there was a moral in it.
The moral is go to paragonfxgroup.com.
There we go. Love this man. Love this man. Yes, do that. And you know what? Let's resurrect. Here's a good thing to end it on. Let's resurrect that special that we haven't done in a while, where we do the lot. Get everybody up to speed. So you could get the cryocan, you get the maps, you get the cane, and then you're cocked and loaded, waiting on the NV goggles. So we'll put that special up that we haven't done in a little bit. You want to do that?
Yeah, sounds great.
As Amy's like,
I love that special because it gives everybody the opportunity to pick something up all at once. It's a great deal. I mean, you save almost, I think it's a little over $200. So I mean, it's a great special. I love running that thing.
I just thought it might be a pain to sort it out in the.
Nah, Rhonda's got that. She all good on that one.
All right, cool. Well, let's do that and run it for the next week.
Perfect.
Cool. So you guys look for that. It's a good way to save a good chunk of cash because the shipping and everything can get a little nutty on these things. But yeah, that'll bring everybody up to speed in one swoop who just wants to make sure they've got all the pieces. So check that out. Other than that, have a good weekend. Let's go. We ran long on this thing.
Here's to hoping it posts.
All right, you guys have a good weekend. See you.